Great. So we are at the top of the hour. We'll get started. And if you don't mind watching the waiting room as you have been, see if anyone else comes in to join us. So we'd like to welcome everybody here today to our Intro to Social Acquisition and Investment Cooperative session. This is a collaboration between Village Wealth and the Alberta Community and Cooperative Association. So for those of you who are unaware, Village Wealth is a platform developed within the business acquisition space, but particularly for business buyers. So it's a platform where folks wanting to buy a business can be supported and find the resources they require to both locate and purchase a business. And then we have the Alberta Community and Cooperative Association. We have Seth Leon here if he wants to give a wave. The ACCA supports cooperative development throughout the province and work jointly with the BC Cooperative Association. We have Zoe Creighton here as well, who will give a wave from the BC side of things. So welcome to everybody. We'll head to the next slide and ask for a bit more involvement in the introduction part of this hour. So if you wouldn't mind hopping into the chat and sharing your name. If your organization is relevant to the reason you're here today, feel free to share your organization. Otherwise, what brings you here today? If you're involved with an investment cooperative or a social acquisition of some type, we'd love to know. Or if you're just curious, we'd also like to know that. So we'll take a moment to get that information in the chat and get to know each other. Feel free to use the direct message function if you want to poke anyone in particular that you see in the audience that you might want to get to know. My name is Bridget Legault. I am the project manager working on this collaboration with Village Wealth and the ACCA. And so we are working, this project's come together to help kind of accelerate and create awareness of the work that various investment cooperatives are doing and the formation of new investment cooperatives throughout Alberta and British Columbia. And we'll get more into that. But I will just make the disclaimer first off that I am not a cooperative expert in any way, shape, or form. So we have Seth and Zoe, and I'm sure others on the call today here. I can't see all your names, but I know there were a few others looking to join who know this world very well, much better than I. But I have worked in the social impact sector, consulting with social enterprises as well as startups. And so I look forward to learning alongside you today as I guide you through this conversation, which will hopefully be engaged with not only Seth and Zoe and myself, but with all of you. So if you have any questions, throw them in the chat, raise your hand, however you want to get our attention. So on that note, great to see everybody is sharing their info. Yeah, Gary, we have from Impact Calgary, so that's great. Loves Cooperative. Selena is here, a friend and old colleague of mine, and others from the co-op world. So thanks for being here today. I think we also have Annette from Village Wealth and Josh Diaz from Village Wealth in the background, who are there to support as well. So we'll get right into it. We'll head right into the content. We'll maybe move ahead to the next slide, if you don't mind, Annette. So we're here today to talk about kind of this world of social acquisition. And it's a really great opportunity and kind of a new world of discovery for the business world. I see someone else coming in, so we'll just let them in. So there's significant trends happening in business succession. And so whether or not maybe you work in in business in any capacity, you're probably aware of what's happening with succession in small to medium enterprises across Canada. There are, nearly 400,000 small and medium enterprises looking to exit their businesses simply because of demographic type of factors, such as baby boomers looking to retire from their businesses, or others may be transitioning for various reasons. And of those, it's becoming less and less common to have a family succession plan. So, leaving it to the next generation. And so a lot of folks are looking to exit their businesses in a different way. And so the question then becomes, what will happen to all of these businesses looking to exit? Who will buy them? and what will that look like for the communities within or that they operate within. So there's all of this activity happening in succession planning, some call it exit planning. Like any business space, there's a lot of jargon in that world, but essentially folks are looking to move out of their businesses. And then if we look at the other side of this Venn diagram, we have all of these economical factors that are affecting everything in the world today, really, but that really create this opportunity for social acquisition. So with inflation taking this really strong pivot right now, the high interest rates, all of these economical factors making it harder for both individuals and businesses to access capital for various reasons, whether it be buying a business or otherwise. On the investing side of things, we generally tend to invest in the stock market, where our investing dollars go to most often national or global companies, where their impact or our dollars impact is not generally affecting our local communities or where we actually live and work and operate every day. And on the flip side of that, even when huge organizations are moving into our communities, like the Amazon warehouses or the Walmart stores, sure, they're setting up shop and it appears to look like that will support the local economy, but we all know that they generally come with low wages, and the profits are going elsewhere, back to those companies. So of course there's this huge buzz around local investing, social enterprise. Choose your jargon or your terminology. There's all of this buzz around ESG, so environment, social governance practices within corporations, or corporate social responsibility, CSR, another 3-letter acronym. All of this buzz is happening, and it's happening because nearly 90% of especially kind of millennials and younger believe businesses should be measured on more than their financial performance, and companies are obviously paying attention to that and having to pivot their operations accordingly. But not only that, but I found a statistic that only 5% of people actually believe that corporations are doing right by the consumers that they serve. So there's this huge frenzy of activity happening on this kind of social impact, social enterprise, whatever you want to call it, trends in business right now. And so when you look at these two kind of key areas colliding, we really have an opportunity in the middle here for what we call social acquisition. Drum roll, please. We'll move to the next slide, where we will talk about what social acquisition means. What does this term mean? It is a fairly new term in the business world, to be honest. So if you were to Google social acquisition, you may or may not find a whole ton of information. But I will share this definition, which is a little lengthy, and we'll break it down. It comes from a group called the Legacy Leadership Lab, and I won't go too far down a rabbit hole, but feel free to Google L3 or Legacy Leadership Lab. It was a group out of the University of Waterloo who began studying this intersection of all of these kind of social enterprise and succession trends colliding. And they started their work just before the pandemic. And so when the world went virtual, they were able to bring their work virtual, and they were doing a lot of research and experimentation in this world of social acquisition. And so groups like Village Wealth, I think the ACCA, Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, and a few other organizations that I'm involved with actually were involved in this turned national project around social acquisition, and they started to develop things like definitions and some projects around this work. So feel free to Google that if you want. The group, I think, is turning is complete. The work is complete, and it's now transitioning to a different project, but I don't know anything about that, so I can find out more if you need to. But bottom line, they defined social acquisition in this way. So it's the process in which a conventional business, so think of your, coffee shop on Main Street or the manufacturer in that industrial area in your community, small to medium business, undergoes this change of ownership. So the business is purchased by a new individual or a new organization. So that's the acquisition side of things, which may be obvious. But the social acquisition piece comes in when there is a social purpose embedded in that organization once it's taken over from the new owners. And so if you think back to that previous slide with the two circles, it's really that intersection of these two worlds of business transitioning and social purpose coming together. So it's a pretty cool space. It's, like I said, a pretty new area in business. And it's no doubt that this definition will continue to evolve and take probably other, other formations and hopefully become more concise, because it's a little lengthy. But that's essentially what we're working with in the social acquisition space. So, thanks for sharing the L3 link there, Seth. So we'll continue on to the next slide to give you a better idea of what these acquisitions could look like. So they could take one of these three forms or a combination of these three forms from my best understanding. The first is pretty straightforward. It's that sale to a new owner, whether it be, selling a business to an individual or an organization, and then embedding that social purpose within it. The second way these can take shape, which is quite interesting, is a municipal buyout. So where a town or a city will purchase a vital business in the community that may otherwise be disappearing, and that gives them a new revenue stream for the town itself or community itself. Also interesting is around the nonprofit space. So for those in the nonprofit world, funding is becoming more and increasingly more scarce around grants, donations, with so many competing audiences for donations for nonprofits. So some nonprofits are looking to diversify their revenue streams by purchasing a business, and they will then embed their own social purpose, whatever their nonprofit does, into that business, and or use the revenues from that business to fund their nonprofit programming. So it just gives them a more stable way of funding a nonprofit versus depending on the government or donors. And so those two areas are two that we'll kind of maybe just set aside for now, though if you'd like more resources on them, we have tons in our toolkit. So reach out if those areas of our interest. There are many organizations who work and support these two areas. Sorry, sale to owners isn't something we're gonna let go of. It will combine with the third one, which is employee or community buyout. This is where we're really gonna focus around how the sale to new owners and the employee or community buyout can really come together for a powerful tool to acquire or invest in local businesses in communities who may otherwise be looking to sell outside of the community or close or whatever their trajectory might look like. So the employee and community buyouts take this formation of a cooperative structure most often. And as mentioned, this is not my area of expertise. So in a minute here, we'll just turn to our experts for more insight here, but we'll head to the next slide. I just first want to hear from everybody. When you hear the word cooperative, what comes to mind? Especially for those who are not in the cooperative space. Really curious to know what MEC, that's right, Josh, me too, MEC. I know I'm a member. I don't really know what that means other than I can buy my snow pants there. I think of the grocery store, the co-op grocery store. You're an owner, own that, Josh. The co-op grocery store, I shop there because it is a cooperative. I shop there because I get a check at the end of the year. For me, not MEC anymore. Yeah, that's right, Selena. So it means nothing anymore. Okay. I want to hear more. So I'm going to turn this over to Zoe, because a cooperative structure is just another business structure. As we have corporations, we have sole proprietorships, we have cooperatives. Enter Zoe with why is a cooperative such a unique business structure, Zoe?
Yeah, sorry about the MEC comment. It's just, it demutualized. It's no longer a cooperative. So we used to be member owners, and now if we're members, it just means we're the same as everyone else participating in commerce of a great outdoor retailer. Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, I mean, I think you've kind of hit the very high level nail on the head around what a cooperative is. And it is like co-ops are kind of the original social enterprise, just to speak in terms that you've already introduced. And they have 150-year-old like formal history and a trillion-year-old or whatever since humans have existed, formalizing collaborative activity and shared ownership and shared risk. But the key pieces are that in contrast to a traditional corporation, co-ops are at their very core social purpose organizations that are rooted in their communities and that are formed out of a shared need to address either gaps in services or a shared need of people who come together to either access services or, the original food co-ops came around economies of scale, realizing economies of scale for members to be able to purchase stuff affordably. The other difference is around the structure, which is innately democratic. One member gets one vote, regardless of how many shares they own, how much they participate in the co-op. It's just one person, one vote. So you can have 10,000 shares or you can have one share. You get one voice at the table. And then the third one is the difference in the allocation of surplus. There are two kinds of co-ops. There are nonprofit co-ops, which we may go into a bit or not. And then the traditional co-ops where surplus is returned to the member owners based upon their patronage. They're actually called patronage returns, or reinvested in the co-op. They don't get hemorrhaged out into the ether to shareholders who aren't involved in the co-op in some way, either through patronage or by wanting to support its social purpose. And they're across the spectrum. They're also known as the Swiss Army knife of local economies. So there are tiny little 3-person worker co-ops, and there are tens of thousand member credit unions, and they're both at their core united around addressing people's needs in a democratic way.
Awesome. So when I get that check from the co-op grocery store, that is my patronage payout.
Correct.
Cool. Okay, so there we have it. Cooperatives in a nutshell by Zoe. That is good to understand as we continue on in this conversation of investment cooperatives. So there are various cooperatives, and I see Heather here from Cooperatives First as well. They have some great 101 courses on cooperative stuff, which are free generally, I think. Maybe Heather can share some of that info there so you can learn a bit more about cooperatives. But today we're going to talk about the structure of investment co-ops. So what does this mean? If we head over to the next slide, we have a definition here that we've tried to make as simple as possible, so it's very understandable. Feeding off of what Zoe has talked about with cooperatives, when they are an investment co-op, they are a for-profit entity generally, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, made up of local community members who invest in sustaining and growing their local economy. So I think of it just as this investment tool where various people from my community can bring their money together, and we can now go out to our community to create whatever economical and social impact needs to happen. And so there are various ways investment co-ops can do this. We're talking about acquiring a local business, so that's certainly one way. They can simply just invest, maybe not take full ownership. They can invest or purchase real estate in their communities. There's a few stories out there around buildings, historical buildings which are purchased and brought back to life, which then creates more of that energy in communities, and main streets are kind of revitalized. And they can also provide microloans, small loans to the local businesses and or projects happening in the community. So we're going to touch on some different examples of this so that it is a bit more tangible to understand and understandable. So we'll move ahead to the next slide, if you don't mind, Annette. Thank you so much. So when we look at the impact that these investment cooperatives, we'll just touch on the impact that these co-ops can have on both the enterprises or businesses they're supporting and or the broader community. So I'll turn to Seth in a moment to talk a bit more about the broader community impact before we get into examples. But here are kind of the ways Village Wealth has broken this down in our minds around how can we impact entrepreneurs or business acquisitions through investment co-ops. So once a community has pooled their capital or their money, they can then help local businesses grow. And so we'll talk about certain co-ops here coming up that have done this in a way where they are investing kind of like a VC or an angel investor, like they're investing money into a business so that that business can then increase their resources and then create more sales and revenue, et cetera. So they can help them grow. Quite often these investment cooperatives come together around a shared cause to save a local keystone building or business from closing. And so we'll talk more about that as well. They can support small businesses and medium-sized businesses in not only financial ways, but also as patrons of the business. You're obviously we shop more at co-op, so we can, maybe get a bigger check at the end of the year, especially when it comes to gas nowadays. So the patronage, they can support through patronage, but they can also potentially support through advising the business depending on how it's all set up. And importantly, they can really keep businesses locally owned by members in that community. So versus, outside investors coming in or that sort of situation, we can keep our money invested right where we can see it growing and flourishing and creating impact around us. So this is kind of what the impact it can have on businesses. And we'll dig into some examples in a moment. But before that, we'll just move into the next slide because it's, I think, really important to talk about the greater economic impact it has throughout the community. And Seth has been involved with so many of these groups. Thought it would just be best if we turned it over to him to talk about some of these areas that are affected by investment cooperatives.
Great, thanks, Bridget. And yeah, that first slide really captures it of, this alignment between the mission of a co-op and what its activities are in the community. So this idea, the grand purpose of we want to see local business development, we want to see local ownership, and that the co-op is a structure to be able to raise, pursue those activities, invest locally, steward capital, and really be in it for the long haul. And this alignment, I guess, between like mission and the business operations of raising and deploying capital into a community. And I think too, sometimes it's, you can start really broad of, we want to cooperate or we want to see more local economic development. And that's kind of the end of the sentence. But how can we get a little more specific to say, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And maybe where there's a bit of precedence. So Bridget did a great overview of the locally owned business development, the importance of local ownership. So we think of economic multiplier effect. Where do dollars leave our economy? How do we take small businesses and grow them to larger businesses to create better jobs, things like that, and really retain wealth and have more control over where that wealth goes within our own community. And we tend to see better outcomes that way. So I won't belabor the point, but I think we all have a good kind of connection to what local, stronger local business could look like in our own communities. In terms of renewable energy, we're seeing, these are pretty big projects as well. It's an emerging market. And who's going to take the lead on this, and who's going to really ensure that the communities that are impacted by energy transition and the ones that can benefit from it, again, are retained locally? In Alberta, we have a number of renewable energy co-ops, Solar Power Investment Co-op of Edmonton, Alberta Solar Co-op, Southern Alberta Renewable Energy Co-op, and I see we've got Jody here from Bow Valley Green Energy Co-op, and a lot of that direction of how to make that local impact, how to build projects that are for a unique need or part of that category. And where we've seen a lot of uptake of renewable energy in different parts of the world, it tends to have a lot of community ownership. People are voting with their dollars to say, yeah, we want solar, or we want wind, or we want energy retrofits in our community. We're willing to invest our own money into this, and as well to have some control over that as owners, which is really interesting. Co-ops have a huge background in the development of agriculture. It's often farmers trying to solve a challenge around access to markets or more control over prices. And so there's a natural kind of fit with ag producers and co-ops. So I don't have to give the entire history lesson, but when we think of the supply chain challenges that we've seen as a result of COVID, and as well the need for more local solutions, how are we going to finance that? And so communities that are both, say, producers, consumers of ag products, they want to be involved in better local and more sustainable solutions. There's a really good fit here for local capital. And really being able to square the circle of, say, for instance, a farmer investing in the supply chain. that's increasing their resiliency on those aspects. If you're not a farmer or a producer, you can still participate as an investor and really to be aligned with those sustainable agricultural goals. Technology is something I think that's really interesting. Often when we think of co-ops, yeah, we think of, say, the old credit unions or the old, say, as I was mentioning, like ag producer co-ops or even our rural utilities, which were, kind of before we had access to electricity in lots of parts of rural areas. But in terms of technology, we are seeing lots of innovation there that, ag, if it's ag tech, wouldn't it be great, if producers also own part of the technology? We think of a lot of the, where is there disruption happening in our economy? We think of all the food delivery services and Ubers. Could those be locally owned? And what type of financing needs could be there? And how could investors own part of a technology that they use on a regular basis? So again, we're seeing some examples of this. A co-op that we're working with based in Montreal called Radish is doing some really interesting work and as well engaging drivers and restaurants and people who like to order food, as well as tech investors in a cooperative structure to be able to build more resilient local solutions there. And then, of course, community economic development projects, where we're seeing co-ops have a dual goal of both being, how to create a financial return as well as social impact return on investment. And because we live in proximity to where we invest, we're also able to capture a lot of those benefits. So if I want to invest in, say, the downtown revitalization project, I might get the return on investment from that of lending capital to this project or having equity in it. But at the same time, I have businesses in my community that are in walking distance. I have jobs for people in my neighborhood. There's, this matter of access that I'm all retaining that benefit because I live so close to it. And if I'm a member of the investment co-op in my community, I can also impact the outcome. I can say, yes, we think this is a great project. I want to invest, or I want to be part of a committee to find the next investment, things like that. So I think kind of flipping it on the one hand is we can advocate for more co-ops and more local investing, but how do we get a little granular saying, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? And could there be a co-op solution there? Yes, yeah, Eva rideshare as well. So I think I've covered a lot of ground, so I'll hand it back to Brigitte.
Yeah, you have it, and it's great. So I think it's important to acknowledge like the broader impact that cooperatives and investment cooperatives are having outside of just thinking of it as like traditional acquisition or transitioning of a business. There's so much more to it than that. So we'll go to the next slide though, and we'll present a bit of a case study that shows a great acquisition example. This is a real life example, though it is not a done deal. So we won't share the name of the community who is working on this project. However, it's a great example. So there is a community whose main business is, whose main industry is tourism in the summer months. There was significant turnover happening with the ownership of the local marina and general store. And this is the only general store, I think, within a 45-mile radius or something. I don't know if the exact distance, doesn't matter, but they would be quite isolated from resources without having this key business in their community operating the marina and the store. And so they were once again at risk of losing this just because of a situation with the current owner. And so some folks in the community decided to come together. From my understanding, some knew each other, some didn't, some have business experience, some don't, but they all came together with this shared passion and around, sustaining their local economy. The store obviously plays a big part in the tourism side of things, but also in their everyday life the rest of the year. And so they are now coming together and incorporating as a co-op to purchase this business and all of its assets, including the real estate. And so they're in my mind, it's kind of like going down two roads. You're going down the road of what does it look like to incorporate a co-op and come together as a community in a co-op structure, and what does it look like to acquire a business? And so there are various advisors along that journey, such as Seth and Zoe and the co-op side, lawyers, accountants, business broker, maybe not business broker in this case specifically, but there's always all of these advisors involved in a business acquisition. And so essentially like a team is formed, both an internal team, a core leadership group in that community, and then the advisor team that will support them in this process. but they will walk through the steps of incorporating their co-op, creating a business plan, deciding on who will operate it. Will it be the employees currently there? Will there be new ones brought on? What will all of that look like? They'll have to conduct significant outreach within their community to get co-op members on board, to get investors on board, volunteers, working committees, to move the work forward. So it really is a great example of a project that's bringing the community together to save this vital business for their community. But additionally, once the dust settles on this transaction, they will have the structure in place potentially to continue to provide financing to various projects or other businesses in their community if they choose to do so, and if they actively, sustain the investors that are taking part. So it's just a really interesting example of this at work, and how it could potentially look in your own community if that's of interest. So we'll show a few other examples on the next slide that you may or may not be familiar with. I know quite a few of you here are in the Calgary area. Local Investing YYC is a group. So they're not necessarily acquiring full businesses, but they are undergoing continuous capital raises, investment raises in Calgary. And they have a certain investment criteria where they invest in locally owned YYC businesses who also support UN sustainability goals. So that's their investment criteria. If you're an entrepreneur looking for financing, or an investor looking to get involved in the Calgary area, that is a great group to turn to. They've invested in companies like Lowen Skincare, Mob Squad, which is a tech startup, Fiasco Gelato, which everyone knows and loves, although I think they have a new name now, right? I've been out of Calgary for a bit. Anyway, other companies too. Transition Salt Spring is a great example of a micro lender, kind of situation where they're providing microloans for sustainability projects on Salt Spring Island. We have I'm going to jump down to the Battle River Railway up in Forestburg, Alberta. They purchased a defunct rail line in their community in 2010, and now they offer both not only storage and commodity transportation for farmers in their community, but also a tourism spot. So you can go check out the railway, and it looks quite fun. I'd like to go. So this serves customers with a couple of locomotives, and it's a great way to keep locals engaged in their economic development. There's some great media coverage on that if you look that one up. I'm going to maybe turn it over to some of the other folks in the room to talk about some of these other groups that they've been involved in and what that has looked like from an acquisition or investing perspective. We have Zoe, do you maybe want to speak about the West Kootenay and the various groups in the Kootenays? There's a lot of this activity in the Kootenays.
Sure, yeah, we have 4 or 3 principal community investment co-ops in the West and East Kootenay in the southeast of British Columbia, the one of which I am a member of. I don't know where to put that last word in that sentence, is the West Kootenay Community Investment Co-op. And the way they work is harnessing local capital that would otherwise leave the area to work collectively to support emerging and growing local enterprises. And the 3 of these ones, they have to have some greater purpose, whether it be social or environmental or renewable energy or whatever. But mostly it's investors are encouraged to keep their money local, and the buy-in is $1,000 for an initial investment, but then members are encouraged to purchase additional membership shares so that we can support and actually see and ultimately patronize if there's service or producer businesses. We can see where our money goes locally, which is a big, big deal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know Jody's here, and maybe we'll turn to Jody from Bow Valley Green Energy in a moment, but Seth, would you like to touch on the Sangudo project?
Great. Yeah, a lot of you might be familiar with them. They're one of the first to embark on this. And yeah, a group of 22 individuals formed a co-op to acquire kind of the only business that was for sale in their community, which was an abattoir. They bought it. They've owned it since, I believe, 2011, 2012, and they've been able to grow this business to create a number of new jobs. They've been able to convert the ownership into a loan for the entrepreneurs. So then being able to kind of pivot and invest in some other opportunities that are there. We've also learned a lot of them in terms of like their practice, strategy for identifying opportunities and engaging their community. And I think it really identified this part of how could a group of people that say aren't in the abattoir business can get into the economic development space by acquiring a business through this lens of, well, we're not going to get rich off of owning an abattoir. We might do okay, but we really want to use this as a way to drive more economic activity. The co-op governance, as well as some of the cooperative exemptions, won't veer too far into the weeds on that side, but just really saying we need a vehicle to be able to acquire this business, and a co-op was the solution that's there. So a really, really interesting case study, as well as great community to hang out with and to learn more there. And thanks to Heather for putting in all these links about the case studies and Bridget as well. So
yeah, that's awesome. Jody, I know you're there. Do you want to, like Seth spoke about renewable projects. I think it's important to have a bit of clarity around that, because it's something I didn't fully understand in the beginning of this work is renewable projects. What does that mean, and how can I get involved?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Bridget. So basically, in a nutshell, what we do is we gather community investment and use that money to design, install, and operate renewable energy systems. We're currently focusing on installing solar panels, and we sell the energy that we create using our solar panels, and that's how we kind of make our revenue, which we give back to our investors. At the moment, we have a share offering open to friends, family, and accredited investors. So people can find out a little bit more on our website. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. Basically, we currently have one system in operation, and we're constructing another. And we have at least 2 more that are going to be built this year. So by the end of the year, we'll have 4 projects. We are still, as I say, seeking investment. We have lots more opportunities coming down the line. It's $1,000 minimum investment, and we're targeting a 2.4% return, which is what you would get if you invested in renewable energy on the TSX.
Wonderful. That is put very clearly. Thank you. And there are so many of those renewable groups across, especially the province of Alberta, with all the sunshine we get. So it's really exciting work happening in various ways and in really creative ways. So thanks everybody for sharing. I think that gives some great examples of how these things take shape in communities. So let's go to the next slide. If you haven't already for yourself identified what's so exciting about investment cooperatives, we'll spell it out here a little further. I think something that is quite cool about this structure is that, you know, the members of the cooperative can be actively engaged in the business's growth, and they can watch their investment at work right in their own community. And on the Sangudo site, there's some videos from when they first got started years ago. And, you know, the entrepreneur who's running the business, he speaks to how they didn't even have to do marketing, because now you have all the local farmers and community members, town members, sharing the word about this awesome project, and everybody knows, didn't have to spend $1 on marketing. You can be engaged in so many different ways and really watch these, you know, flourish right in your backyard. The other thing Jody mentioned about seeking accredited investors, many of these groups, you do not need to be an accredited investor to invest. There are groups where they are TFSA and RSP eligible. Local Investing YYC is an example of this. And so this really de-risks the investment for folks and makes it a little bit more palatable than, say, sometimes when we say the word cooperative, you know, we just don't know it, so we might shy away. But when we speak in TFSA, RSP language, it's a more palatable thing to approach. And so it's great tax benefits too. So that's wonderful. And then, of course, the local impact, as we've, you know, we keep beating the drum, but being able to see businesses not go under, for one, stay and sustain and grow in your communities, and the jobs that creates, and the youth and individuals it keeps in your communities, I think is just incredibly impactful and important. Anything else to add here from Zoe, Seth, Jody, Heather, anyone?
Think you nailed it, Bridget. Actually, I could add color to each of those, but I think you've really hit on the key pieces, and starting them is a really amazing generative social capital developing activity as well.
That's a really good point. And starting them, that's a great segue, I think, to the next slide. How on earth do you start such a thing? Well, and how do you participate? So there's various ways. As we mentioned, you know, if you want to start one, great, be in touch. Let's give you all the resources you'd need to even start the conversation, maybe with a few key people in your community. And that seems to be generally how it starts. A few key people come together in the community and start the conversation and seek out the various supports that are available to help you get something underway. And there's the various pools of funding and different things that can help you get one off the ground. You can join one. We've mentioned 6, but there are far more. So depending on where you're located, if you're curious if there's something happening in your local area, just reach out to one of us and we will see if we're aware of any investment co-ops in your local area. Become an investor. A lot of you are in Calgary, I know, and Local Investing YYC will be doing a raise as far as we know in the fall, I believe. And so, you know, get involved with those in the Kootenays or elsewhere. What I love about Jody's group in the Bow Valley is there's some really actionable ways you can take part if you don't want to take such a big leap as an investor or to start one, which is a huge leap. You can just become a friend of the Bow Valley's co-op. And I mean, you can informally do this with any cooperative. Just give them a call, get to know them, maybe join as a co-op member or as a volunteer. A lot of these groups are looking for volunteers to help in various capacities. So whether you have a business background or a community building background or whatever, there's tons of opportunities to just reach out and participate. Your reaching out will be welcomed. And finally, if you're an entrepreneur or maybe an aspiring entrepreneur looking to acquire a business and you need some financial support, or you are an entrepreneur looking for support to undertake a project within your small business in your community, if you have an investment co-op in the area, there may be an opportunity for you to receive financing or work collaboratively with the investment co-op to as part of your financing of the deal. So there's one last way to participate, which Josh, if you're ready, we'll just head to the next slide, and there's an opportunity to create a profile on the Village Wealth site. So I'll turn it to Josh for that.
Yeah, thanks for that segue, Bridget, and yeah, really great summary. Obviously, at Village Wealth, we are a buyer/investor first platform, and the easiest way to kind of wave your flag around and the investor side of this, which is create a free profile on Village Wealth. It's the best way as a buyer/investor to be found. You know, you can kind of go in, create your profile. It'll walk you through the process of that. And in the About Me section, if you sort of highlight, I'm interested in social acquisition in X region or Y region, so Alberta, BC, or even the greater country, it's the spot for you to kind of dialogue what you're looking for, and it'll split out a beautiful profile that looks like what's on the right-hand side. So those that kind of come in and look at, you know, who are there in the investment pool as buyers, you can be easily found and contacted by those either looking to form a cooperative or those looking to find investors within the cooperative pool. So Bridget, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. On the note, we'll go to the closing slide, which is just another resource for you to dip your toe in the water if you're interested in taking part in some conversation. Sorry, my annotation is still there that I'll clear off. If you're interested in taking part in conversations around social acquisitions and investment cooperatives, we do have an online community via a Slack channel. So you can use this link, which we'll also throw in the chat. So you can click right through where you can join us for conversations, ask the community for resources and seek more information on the topic. But I think what we'll do now is maybe we'll stop screen sharing and we'll just turn it over to everyone in the audience and see what questions do you have? Feel free to unmute, put your hand up, whatever you prefer if you have a question. No questions? Did we cover it?
I have a comment, Bridget, just because
Yeah.
I forgot to say something, and you know, nature abhors a vacuum, especially a vocal one. Some people, when they're thinking about where co-ops fit on kind of the incorporated business spectrum, often, like so many things now, we talk about a spectrum, and co-ops kind of are closer to the end of the left side of the spectrum, where you can find kind of charitable nonprofits, and quite far away from the right side of the spectrum, where there are only for-profit corporations. They don't exist quite as much anymore, but 10 years ago they certainly did. And co-ops are kind of in that ground of as we said, social purpose, but they do generate profits. It's what they do with profits are different. So where the corporate CSR piece is a little bit further down the road, and where the nonprofit co-ops are a little bit to the left, the co-ops that we're talking about are kind of pretty darn close to the middle, but firmly rooted in their social purpose.
For sure.
So there are lots of different graphics that demonstrate that with greater or lesser success, but I find it lands on people as where to place the co-op model in this language.
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for that addition. Any other questions? Well, with that, we'll maybe give everybody 15 minutes of their day back. And we want to say a huge thank you for joining us. We know it is summertime and there are far too many distractions this time of the year, which is a good thing. But this will be a recording that will live on the ACCA Likely Village Wealth YouTube channels. So they can be shared and referred to for those who are, you know, out enjoying the summer and not on Zoom with us here today. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bridget. Nice to see you all.